will take those spirals all day long to the bank and back again. I just want to admire you, you magnificent beastie.
It's the Great Taylor C. Baker Show.
Hello and welcome back to the Great Taylor C. Baker Show, or in this case, the Great Taylor Christmas Baker Show, where I am baking my way through the Great British Bake Off technical challenges in hopes to live up to my namesake and become a better baker. And today we have pov-e-tee-za. Yeah, I'd never heard of it either. It is an Eastern European sweetbread that is sort of looks like a cinnamon roll baked into bread, which how can that not be delicious? So let's find out how to make it. So for this bake, we need our mixer to have a handy dandy dough hook, and we're also gonna need a lot of counter space, which I don't super have, so I think I'm gonna end up rolling my dough out later onto my coffee table. So to get started, we're gonna make our dough. I just had a classic Taylor C. Baker mix 'em up. The Great British Bake Off is in the metric system, so I have to do all the calculations to try to get them over to my Americanized noggin, and I was vastly wrong. So let's do this with the right measurements. Take two. You know, in take two, my baking spidey senses were tingling and saying, you know what, Taylor, I don't think this is dough. I think this might be batter. Take three. So we are officially going to do 1 1/4 cup of flour, 3 tablespoons of sugar, 1 1/2 teaspoons, almost did tablespoons of salt, would have been a salty loaf, a little less than a tablespoon of yeast, 2 tablespoons of melted butter, 1 egg, almost dropped everything, a little less than a teaspoon of vanilla, and milk without my dog's hair in it, and just over 1/2 cup of milk. And now we're gonna mix this on a slow speed, and as it starts to come together, we're gonna crank it up to a medium speed for about 5 to 6 minutes. So now we're gonna tip our dough into an oiled bowl. I'm gonna leave this to cool for an hour, and we are gonna see if this turns into something that I can maybe roll out. So this dough was a little bit of a marzipan flashback for me. If you have not watched my Princess Cake episode, click here to see my misadventures in marzipan. But I did it, I finally got my dough. It was a 4th time's the charm situation. I learned 2 things in that process of making it 4 times. 1, I mixed all my wet ingredients outside of my dry ingredients, then started mixing it. 2, while the dough hook is magnificent, she didn't do the job on her own. I had to come in there at the end and do a little kneading by hand to sort of get it to be a less sticky texture that ultimately made actual dough. While my dough is proving for 1 hour, we're gonna go ahead and make our filling. First up, we are going to melt 4 tablespoons of butter into 4 tablespoons of milk. If we're crying over spilt milk, I would be just wailing because there it is. Now it's on the floor. And now we're gonna crush up some walnuts. We need 10 ounces of walnuts. We are gonna do 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 1/2 of 1 cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. And we're gonna combine this. Kind of wants it to be kind of like a sandy texture. So now we're gonna add just an egg yolk. Leave the white, and we're gonna add our butter. So we have our filling. We're gonna set this aside, and then we're gonna somehow roll out a very, 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 very large piece of dough. Our dough is risen, our pan is greased, and we are all set to try to roll this madness out into a very thin layer of dough that hopefully doesn't break and that I can apparently paint this on. It seems like it's gonna go really well. Why don't you take a little trip with me on over to my coffee table? We have our risen dough. Plop. My hands are nice and floured up, and we're gonna roll this out into a 20 by 12 rectangle. Here comes the sort of crazy part. I have to use my hands now to double the size of this, and it's supposed to be very thin and translucent. But before we do that, it says to brush it with melted butter. I feel like this is gonna do nothing but make this way more messy, but I'm here for the mess. If someone walked past my apartment right now, they'd be like, what's This is not the weirdest thing that's happening here. I'm just letting the weight of the dough sort of do the work for you here. So since some time had passed before I used my filling, it said I could add some milk to loosen it up if it was a little too hard. Now we need to spread this, smooth it out. Covered it in cling wrap and then rolled it out. You know, it's not the smoothest ever, but it's mine and I like it. I'm gonna wash my hands so I can roll this up. If I can get up. And now we're gonna roll this up tightly, it says, like a Swiss roll. Ooh, ooh, ooh. It's coming unrolled. It's supposed to be 2 U's, and I think for the size of my little tin, it made 2 U's. And now we are gonna go back into the kitchen because I am an adult, and sitting like this does not feel as good as it did when I was in kindergarten. We have our lovely rolled dough. Let it rise again to prove for 1 more hour. Our dough roll thing, our yummy Eastern European Christmas delight has risen. We are going to brush it with a beaten egg white. This should help her get a nice, lovely golden brown color. Bake at 350 for 15 minutes, and then we're gonna reduce the temperature to 300 and bake for 45 minutes. Bake well. See you in a little while. Ooh wee, this smells magnificent. She has been in the oven for a full hour. Let's take her out. Oh, hello, beautiful. You look like a Thanksgiving turkey. She rose a lot. Nice and golden brown. Not the most beautiful looking thing ever, but it smells magnificent. Leave this to continue baking in the dish for 30 minutes while it cools down, and then we're gonna turn it out and let it cool on the rack. So our final step is we're just gonna do a little snip snip and put our drizzle icing on and clearly make a huge mess. I am pretty pleased with how this turned out. It looks bread-like. The real test, though, is gonna be slicing into it. All right, it's the moment of truth. Will Pa Hollywood be proud of the size of my knife and the bake of my bread? Okay, this is the moment of truth. Are we gonna see the spirals? You're seeing it before me. I got them. That's a spiral. It's really yummy and super Christmassy. If you would like to follow along with my baking misadventures, be sure to hit subscribe. I'm baking through all of the Great British Bake Off technical challenges. So hit subscribe, follow along, and let me know, what do you like to make at Christmas? What's your favorite holiday recipe? Cheers.
It's the Great Taylor C. Baker Show.